Hello, namaste, good evening, and welcome to Chitti Media. First of all, let me take a moment to wish all our viewers a very happy Diwali. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. She's an author. She's worked on sustainability and social work, and she has a new book coming up, which seems to be very interesting. Please join me in welcoming Savita Rao ji. Savita ji, namaste, and welcome to Chitti Media.
Namaste, Sharan.
How are you doing?
Good, good.
Right.
I'm happy to be here.
Very happy to have you here as well. Now, first of all, let me begin with my first question. Can you tell us more about your journey from being a fashion entrepreneur, which you were, a rather successful one, to a sustainability leader? I mean, this is a massive leap. What drew you closer towards sustainability?
Okay, so, my career was in international marketing with an Italian joint venture company, where we were offering high-end shirtings to men's brands, leading men's brands across the world, within India as well as overseas. So it was a very interesting phase, understanding, men's fashion across different countries, working with different designers, brands, and all of that. Then at some point I moved out because it was just more of the same. And I moved out to explore the textile crafts of India, because India has a very rich legacy of crafts. And while there is embroidery, etc., which is shown in very high-end gowns, which may cost $30,000-$50,000, in the mid segment, which is pretty large, there was almost no representation or very little representation of our crafts. So I started working on that, and I, found amazing embroideries from Lucknow, from, Gujarat, Kantha embroidery from Bengal. And I persuaded an American sportswear brand to make shirts, men's shirts out of ikat fabric, which turned out really fabulous. Paul Smith, a Japanese brand, a UK brand, for whom Japan is their biggest market, persuaded them to try chikankari embroidery from Lucknow. And they did that season after season with, great results from the consumers. So while all of this was happening, I had actually started to think of launching a small brand of my own in the menswear accessories. So ties and cufflinks, because they're fun, creative products, and I wanted to have something that I could shape creatively at all points. So I created a brand name. We were prototyping the products. I made a fancy logo, and all of that was happening. And then I read an article on the North Pole melting. And, to this day, even I don't understand why that moved me so much, because, the North Pole is like really far away, and more local issues could have been a tipping point.
Right.
But reading that article, I felt that, from an environmental perspective, we were like, in a very, at the brink of a disaster. And if at that point in time, I went ahead and did men's accessories, it would be like, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So I actually shelved that project aside, and I started to work on sustainability. Started to explore what can be done in this space. How can we look at offering quality products? One of the things that's always been there with me right from the start is to make classic quality products that can be used by customers for years. Because these days there is this whole tendency, when I say these days, it's actually the last couple of decades, there is a tendency to inject obsolescence into every product, whether it is a piece of apparel or a car or a phone, to everything, even furniture for that matter. So, and so products are designed to be having a limited shelf life, which is not good at all from an environment standpoint. And so my, effort has always been to make classic products that will look good as design, ongoingly, as well as from a quality perspective, they will serve the customer who buys them.
Right.
So we started this work, and and then that led me to explore social initiatives in terms of working with women's groups. Then I started to understand that segment a little better in terms of what's actually the problem that a lot of the women face, and how could we possibly help them, not just through the training but also through other initiatives. And so this is primarily what led me towards sustainability and social work. In some sense they come together. I don't think it's even possible to separate it beyond a point.
And you came out with a campaign called India Kuch Kar, and that seems to be very interesting. How did this come about?
So this was actually an outcome of my, frustration sometime around 2012 when I would see street and it was really exhausting to explain to people that, don't litter, don't throw stuff on the streets. So it was like, literally, India kuch kar, an appeal to the citizens that let's do something to make our spaces cleaner. So the vision was that when we have to make the spaces cleaner, we also have to reduce the amount of waste that we, put out from our homes and workplaces. And typically what happens is most campaigns are created and administered by the organization that conceptualizes the campaign. So India Kuch Kar was a little different because we were not, Tatas or Ambanis, and we could have, run this campaign across the length and breadth of the country. So this was done in a way where we created content, made posters available to citizens in any part of India who wanted to participate. They could download, print, and put it up in their office, in their residential building, and make a difference. And we used humor, satire to get the attention of the citizens, and it worked pretty well. There were a lot of companies who took it. Bharat Petroleum, for instance, had invited me to address their All India team, and we did live workshops on cleanliness. And then they took banners which were put up in all their refinery locations across India. So it had a very interesting reception. I had somebody writing in from Ladakh at that point saying that, we love this work, from Sikkim, from Chennai. So it did resonate with customers in different parts of the country. And in fact, one of the ideas from India Kuch Kar was shared by Prime Minister Modi in one of his Mann Ki Baat. And it was also subsequently featured in his Mann Ki Baat book. And so right. that was what India Kuch Kar was all about. Very interesting campaign. We're going to give it a new lease of life now in the months to come.
Right. It does seem like a very interesting campaign. And you went on to meet the Prime Minister after that. Do tell us what it was like meeting the Prime Minister, what you spoke, and what were the outcomes of the meeting.
It was very interesting. So the Mann Ki Baat session was what catalyzed that meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister. And it was at an event. And what I found was that, he spoke very persuasively about the big picture of an issue and the detail. So from fashion to agriculture to defense to a whole lot of things, he spoke, in a way that most people in the audience could have connected with it. You didn't have to be a domain expert to understand what he's saying on agriculture or defense. For example, I remember a point he made. He said, at the perimeter of farms, they would plant timber saplings, which over a period of time would grow into trees, and it would eventually make India sufficient in timber while providing income to the farmer, right? So a small action, resulting into India's self-sufficiency to a greater degree at a future point in time in terms of timber. So it was very interesting to hear his views on various issues. And actually that meeting is what catalyzed India Positive Citizen, which is the initiative that I currently run and the books that I've written about, which is about one action once a week, every week. So inviting every citizen, irrespective of their age or economic background, to do one action at least for, for the community and therefore the country. So the math of this is that, if a person does one action in a week, right, it can mean 52 actions in a year. So when 1 lakh people are doing it, it's potentially 52 lakh actions. 1 crore people, 52 crore actions. Now 52 crore actions is a lot, but 1 crore is still less than 1% of our population. So that points to the potential. It's about harnessing the power of small actions done consistently. And these actions, as citizens, we go about our daily lives, right? We cook food, we buy stuff, we commute to some place, we have time that we could volunteer. So this is about a holistic perspective of a citizen's life and the many ways in which they can possibly contribute by making small things. Like, for example, you're cooking a meal at home, cook a little extra and give it to some person. So you don't have to go out of your way and do something very radical. Some small actions like that can make a big, big difference. The important thing is consistency. Even if you choose to one action, you can pick that one action and do it consistently. Diversity is not important, consistency is.
Right. It's a very innovative and a noble campaign. And Savita ji, if I may draw your attention towards the climate summit that has been happening or recently concluded when this interview is going to be published. What do you make of the Prime Minister's address? Because the agenda that was decided before the summit was going to happen was slightly different from the outcomes and what the Prime Minister spoke about.
I was personally, very inspired and impressed by what Prime Minister Modi spoke at the summit, because I think he made some very bold statements, stated intentions on behalf of India. He also shared the progress made by India. So India wasn't just talking, India had walked the talk since the Paris summit, which I think very few countries, if at all any, could stake claim and say that we did that too. And what is all the more commendable is that all of this happened while we were dealing with the worst pandemic the world has seen in the last 100 years. So even without the pandemic, this would have been a substantial step by India, but it's even more so in the context of what's happened in the last year and a half in India and in the world. So I'm personally very optimistic, and as somebody who's worked in the space of sustainability, I'm very thrilled to see India take a leadership role in the environment. It's very important. I mean, at the end of the day, wherever you live on the planet, right, your last line of your address, stated or not, is the earth. So that's our shared address and our shared future. And this cannot be categorized only or limited to countries, because what one country does affects another country, it affects the planet, right? So
it's
I'm
definitely
very
an interesting thought that he sent across at the summit. Now, in that sense, talking about the main agenda that was there at the summit, how do you think India can move towards achieving net zero according to you?
See, there are things obviously that the government is doing. Like he talked about, the railways initiative to go to net zero by 2030. And from what I have been reading, it seems to be a doable proposition because they're already working on those lines, in terms of switching to LEDs, cutting down their fossil fuels, going solar intensively. In fact, I read recently about something very interesting the railway seems to have done, I think in Chhattisgarh, where they built a shelter and then they've used the roof for solar panels. So you're anyway going to build a shelter and it will need a roof. So instead of having dual costs, they've reduced the cost and made it more efficient and effective. So there's a lot of hard work driven by vision coupled with innovation that's happening. So that makes me very optimistic about what can happen from certain sectors of the country, right? But what makes me hugely optimistic is that for the first time, I have seen any leader, and I'm glad it's Prime Minister Modi, talking about the connect between lifestyle and the climate, the macro climate impact. That's very, very essential. And in fact, I would say that that's been a forgotten factor in most of the summits that we have seen in the past. It's about what a country will do, what a government will do. But unless there is citizen participation, it's very difficult to see those changes. Now, if you take something as simple as plastic, right, where there are so many places, despite plastic ban in varying degrees in different parts of the country, still a lot of single-use plastic bags are being used. Right now, if homes churn out, small hills of plastic every week, and we expect that we will still somehow have clean land, water, air, it's unrealistic. If you have an efficient civic body, the best that they can do is to take all of that plastic and take it to a landfill or to some recycling facility. But beyond that, they cannot really do anything. So we have to cut the unnecessary waste that is being generated from homes and workplaces. And so for the first time, hearing this a leader articulate this connect between, the life and climate, lifestyle and climate, makes me really optimistic about where this can go. And in India, in the last few years, several years since 2014, we have seen enough examples of citizen participation in various areas. Whether it is the Swachh Bharat campaign or the Give It Up campaign for those cylinders. So there has been a decent track record, government, from a government side as well as citizen side. We're understanding how this whole thing works. So now this really needs to be taken, in my view, to citizens. A big issue in this whole sustainability space is lack of information, communication, and therefore understanding. So there's very little data available in a comprehensible way that a regular citizen can look at and say, okay, how can I make a difference? The popular thing about sustainability is, I have to buy organic, and the organic vegetables in the local market are so expensive. So that sometimes becomes the start and end of one's foray into sustainability. But this, taking a holistic approach and helping people understand how their life impacts the planet, I think we have a very real hope for change.
Right. Indeed, change begins at home, and hopefully there will be a more involvement from the citizen side too. What is more interesting about the entire summit is that he spoke about the Panchamrit promise and how this can affect social change and climate change overall. So, for our viewers, could you talk about it a little more and explain what this is all about and why it's important?
So one is, he talked about the non-fossil fuel, capacity to be raised by 2030 to 500 gigawatts. That's obviously something that the government can do and will enable between what it does and enabling private players to come into this space.
Right.
Also, 50% of the country's energy requirements being met with renewable energy sources. This is huge, and especially given the scale and size of India, it makes a lot of difference. So it will mean the rise of this solar power in the renewable industry, employment, a whole value chain that has to support it. So that's so it's not just energy efficiency and clean energy. It's also about employment for millions.
Right.
He talked about how we will reduce our carbon emission by 1 billion tons between now and 2030, which is again a very specific goal. And if various sectors of the economy come together, then it can be done. The other interesting point was to reduce the carbon intensity of the Indian economy. Right. I think that was really can be a game changer, because focus on that can enable a lot of policies and incentivize industries to be more efficient in the way they produce their goods and deliver services. So that's something that's very, very good.
Right.
And about being carbon neutral, and by 2070. 2070 is really a long time away. But what makes me more optimistic are the plans that are already set into motion as of now.
Right.
And the way that they're already yielding results, like for example, the change by the railways, this whole massive drive towards the LED changes, and the kind of change that is making. So I think we have reason to be optimistic. We definitely cannot afford to be complacent.
Right. It does set a certain kind of precedence especially if there is a timeline in place. Whether we are going to achieve it or not by that specific time, only time can tell us. But moving forward, thank you so much for your comments. And you've come out with a new book. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's called India Positive Citizen Perspective, and you've brought out a lot of interesting stories, and some include from the pandemic too. Could you share some of these stories from your book?
Yeah, so this book has 28 amazing India Positive citizens from different fields, from defense to agriculture to yoga, sustainability, healthcare. And they have shared their insights from their life message, from their life journey, and as well a message for citizens. So it's, to my knowledge, it's the first of its kind book where people from so many diverse fields have been brought together to share their views on the nation and what we could do. So this is my tribute to India in the 75th year of our independence. And the reader response so far has been very good. A common thread is that, there's a sense of joy of discovery for most readers to know that there were so many amazing people that they did not previously know about. And the second thing is that they feel a sense of pride in India and in being Indian. And the response from overseas Indians has been very heartening as well, because they're also appreciating to know about people who have contributed to the country. In fact, let me just hold up the book for you and your viewers. This is the book, Putting India First, India Positive Citizen Perspectives. So this is available on Amazon as a Kindle book as well as a paperback book. So whichever format is convenient. I would definitely urge all readers to buy. This is a book that I think every Indian home should have, because it's very interesting for all age groups. And I'm hearing wonderful feedback from some of our contributors and readers who got the book into their home but could not get their hands on it because somebody else took over the book and is now reading it intently. So they're waiting for their turn, right, including senior citizens. And it's very commendable because this is a nearly 300-page book. So if senior citizens are liking it enough to read it intently, I think it's very heartening for me as an Indian first and then an author.
Right. Very good luck on your book. I'm sure it will be a success. And viewers will be putting a link down in the description so that you can directly order the book from Amazon. Before we conclude, let me ask you this, Savitaji. Why is it important as Indian citizens for us to be positive?
Why? Because that's the, in some sense, this is about reconnecting with our roots. We were, as an ancient civilization, we were a well-knit community that looked after each other. And, in the last, I think, a few decades, we have somehow lost track of that. And when every Indian citizen becomes an India positive citizen, I think we will be a superpower without, the need to buy too much of ammunition, because there's so much that we will have addressed by our individual and collective efforts. So I really invite every Indian citizen to join us on this journey, wherever you are on the planet. This is not just for people within the geographical boundaries of India.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm really glad that you could take some time out to join us for a conversation. And hopefully we can do this again.
Sure. My pleasure, Sharan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Savitaji.
And to all of you, happy Diwali to all your viewers.
Yes, thank you so much on their behalf. And do like, share, and subscribe. And do let us know what you thought about this video in the comment section below. Until then, this is your host, Sharan Sethi, signing off.
Okay.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.